The battlefield of space was silent now. Once, only hours ago, it had been filled with fire, screams, and the thunder of weapons. Now, broken ships floated slowly, like ghosts drifting in the endless black. Fragments of steel and shattered glass turned in slow motion, catching the light of a distant sun. What had been a war between humans and aliens was now nothing but ruins. Commander Raynor opened his eyes inside the cracked helmet of his spacesuit. His breathing was heavy, every gasp loud in his ears. A thin line of red blinked on the side of his visor. His oxygen was running low. He tried to move, and pain shot through his ribs. His body was bruised, his armor torn, but somehow he was still alive. Around him, there was no one. His ship was gone, destroyed in the battle. His team. He didn't even want to think about them. The silence outside was worse than the screams he had heard before. The silence meant he was alone. Raynor pushed himself off a piece of floating metal, his body moving slowly in zero gravity. He had trained for this. He knew how to survive. But survival now felt useless. The war was lost. Humanity had been crushed in this part of space. He had failed to protect his people. Then something broke the silence. It was faint, almost too weak to hear, but it was there. A sound. Not the sound of machines or weapons. It was different. He froze, listening carefully. Again it came, a weak pulsing signal like a cry in the distance. His helmet picked it up and the sound traveled into his ears. Raynor frowned. A distress signal? Out here? He turned slowly, scanning the dark. There, among the debris, was the half-broken shape of an alien ship. Its hull was cracked, smoke leaking out like thin streams of shadow. And from that wreck the signal continued to call. Every instinct inside him screamed, "This is a trap." The aliens had tricks. They lured humans in, pretending to be weak, then killed them. He had seen it before, his chest tightened with anger. Why should he care? Why should he go closer? But then, the signal changed. It wasn't just mechanical. There was something different. A softer sound hidden inside the signal, almost like crying, almost like voices too small, too fragile. Children? Raynor shook his head. It didn't make sense. Alien children, here, in a war zone? Why would they be alive when their warriors had died? But the sound repeated, weak, desperate, and his chest ached at the thought. Slowly, carefully, he pushed himself toward the alien wreck. His oxygen meter flashed again. He had less than 30 minutes left. Every second mattered. Every move could decide life or death. But something inside him pushed him forward. Curiosity, maybe, or something deeper. As he reached the ship, he saw scorch marks along its surface. It had taken direct hits. Holes were punched through its armor, revealing dark corridors inside. The ship was broken, wounded, almost dead, just like him. Raynor grabbed the edge of the wreck and pulled himself in. The inside was dark, only faint emergency lights glowing in red. The air was filled with smoke and sparks. He floated carefully, through the hull, his heart pounding in his chest. Each corner could hide an enemy. Each shadow could hold a trap. The signal grew louder. The cries echoed softly now, bouncing off the walls. They weren't screams of soldiers. They weren't commands. They were softer, smaller, trembling sounds. He stopped at a sealed door. The sound was behind it. He placed his hand on the cold metal. For a moment he thought about turning back. Why should he save them? These aliens had destroyed his world, taken lives without mercy. If these were their children, why should he show mercy? But another thought rose inside him. His own colony, years ago. The burning streets, the terrified faces of human children, running as fire fell from the sky. He remembered his sister, her small hand holding his, asking if they would survive. He had promised her they would. He had been wrong. She hadn't survived. Raynor's hand tightened into a fist. His breath shook. He knew the truth. Children were innocent. War was not theirs to fight. Whatever species they belonged to, they were not the enemy. Not yet. He pulled his tool from his belt and forced the door open. Metal screeched, sparks flew, and the heavy door slid aside. Inside, he froze. Small pods lined the walls, glowing faint blue. And inside them, children. Alien children. Their eyes were large, shining faintly in the dark. Their bodies were thin, fragile, some covered in bruises. They looked terrified, pressing against the glass as they saw him. The sound he had heard was theirs. Their cries, their signals for help. Rayner's chest grew heavy. He couldn't look away. They were alive but weak. If he left them here, they would die. Slowly. Alone. Just like the humans who had been left behind. For the first time since the battle ended, he felt something more than pain and anger. He felt a choice rising before him. Commander Rayner stood, in the silence, surrounded by the wreckage of war. The children's eyes followed him, wide with fear, wide with hope. His oxygen warning blinked again, sharp and urgent. He had minutes to decide. Minutes to choose whether to save them, or to walk away. And in the endless black of space, the silence waited for his answer. The silence of the alien ship was broken only by the faint cries. Commander Rayner floated in the corridor, his heart racing inside his chest. The pods behind the sealed door had shown him something he never thought he would see. Alien children, alive, terrified, and completely helpless. Their glowing eyes had pierced through him, shaking something deep inside. He had fought their kind for years, yet these small beings were not warriors. They were victims. He moved closer to the first pod, pressing his hand gently against the glass. The child inside flinched, shrinking back, its breathing quick and shallow. Its body was thin, its skin pale, and its large eyes filled with fear. Rayner could almost hear what the child was thinking. This is the enemy. He will kill us. But he did not move with violence. He only stood there, his chest rising and falling as the air in his suit grew thinner. His oxygen meter blinked again, reminding him that time was running out. If he stayed too long, he would die here. If he left now, the children would die instead. For a moment, the soldier in him whispered coldly, "Leave them. They are not your responsibility. They are aliens, enemies." But another voice, older and heavier, spoke louder. Children are not enemies. They are life. They are innocence. Rayner shook his head. He didn't have time to argue with himself. He needed answers. Why were they here? Where were their soldiers, their caretakers, their guardians? Why had they been left behind? He tapped the glass of the pod lightly, and the child's eyes blinked. A soft whimper escaped its mouth, almost too weak to hear. But then from the other pods, the cries grew stronger. It was not one voice, it was many. A chorus of small broken voices rising together. Fear, confusion, and desperate hope filled the dark room. Rayner's throat tightened. He remembered the streets of his colony, children running through smoke, clutching broken toys, crying for parents who would never return. He remembered his little sister's hand slipping from his. These cries were not alien to him. They were human cries in a different tongue. He turned and scanned the room. Emergency lights flickered across the walls, casting long shadows. A terminal in the corner blinked faintly, its symbols written in alien script. Rayner floated over, his gloves brushing against the console. The screen showed a translation of the signal he had followed. His helmet AI, though damaged, managed to process some of it. The translation was rough, broken, but the words were clear enough. Emergency. Evacuation failed. Pods contain children. Protect at all cost. No soldiers left. Rayner's jaw clenched. These children were not prisoners. They had been abandoned by accident, not design. Their people had tried to save them, but had failed. Now they were stranded, waiting for death. He looked back at the pods. Small faces stared at him, trembling, some pressing their hands against the glass as if begging. He could almost feel their questions. Who are you? Will you save us? Or will you leave us to die? The cries grew louder, echoing through the corridor. They were pulling at him, breaking the wall he had built around his heart. Every sound struck like a blade of memory. He closed his eyes. He was human, a soldier. His mission had always been survival, victory, revenge. But right now, survival meant walking away, and victory meant nothing in the face of these voices. He opened his eyes again, harder now, more determined. He spoke softly, though he knew they could not understand. I'm not your enemy. I won't let you die here. Raynor moved quickly to the first pod, examining the locks. His suit scanner beeped, showing that the life support systems were failing. The oxygen inside the pods was low. In less than an hour, the children would suffocate. He didn't have an hour. He barely had 20 minutes left of air for himself. Every second mattered. His gloved hands pulled at the controls. Sparks shot out, and the lock resisted. He gritted his teeth, using his strength to pry it open. Metal groaned, glass hissed, and finally, the first pod cracked open. The child inside gasped, coughing, its small body shaking. Its wide eyes locked on him. For a heartbeat, fear ruled the moment. Then slowly, the child reached out a trembling hand toward him. Raynor froze. The touch of an alien child was not something he had ever imagined, but as he looked at the small hand, weak and shaking, something in him broke. He extended his own hand and gently took it. The child's skin was cold but alive. Real. Behind him, the other children cried louder, pressing against their pods, desperate to be free. The chorus grew, filling the room, echoing through the ship like a haunting song of survival. Raynor felt the weight of the moment. His oxygen meter flashed red again, warning him. His strength was fading, but his heart was no longer uncertain. He would not walk away. Commander Raynor pulled the child into his arms, his grip steady, his voice firm. "You're safe now." The cries echoed around him, no longer only sounds of fear. They were also cries of hope. And in that broken, dying ship, the human soldier understood. The war had not taken everything from him. He still had the power to protect. The strange cry had found him, and he had answered. Commander Raynor floated inside the broken alien ship, his breath heavy in the helmet. The first pod had been opened, and the small alien child now clung weakly to his arm. Its eyes were wide, shining faintly in the red emergency light, and its tiny fingers gripped his glove like a lifeline. Behind him, the other pods glowed, their occupants pressing against the glass, their cries rising in waves. Raynor's chest tightened. His oxygen meter flashed red again. Only 15 minutes left. His lungs felt heavy already. Every second he spent here was another step closer to death. He looked at the child in his arms. It was fragile, trembling, its breaths shallow. It was alive. And that meant he now carried more than just his own survival. He carried responsibility. But inside him, the struggle began. The soldier's voice. "This is madness," the soldier in his mind whispered. "They are the enemy. Their people killed your world. They burned your cities. They destroyed your family. Why should you save theirs?" Raynor's jaw tightened. He remembered the screams of his people, the flames swallowing the streets, the alien ships raining destruction. He remembered holding his sister's hand, her voice begging him to protect her. And he remembered the silence that followed when she was gone. The soldier's voice pressed harder. "These children will grow into soldiers. One day they will fight humans. One day they will kill again. Why help the cycle continue?" Raynor closed his eyes. The voice was cruel, but it was not wrong. The human's voice. But another voice rose, quieter, softer but stronger in its truth. They are children, innocent, helpless. They did not choose this war. They did not choose to fight. They only chose to live. Raynor opened his eyes and looked at the alien child again. Its eyes were not filled with hate. They were filled with fear and hope. It was not a soldier. It was not an enemy. It was a child, like the ones he had once promised to protect. And in that moment, he realized the truth. If he abandoned them, he would be no different than the monsters who had abandoned his own people. The weight of choice. He moved to the second pod, his fingers shaking as he tried to force it open. Sparks flew, the lock resisted, but he kept pushing. His breath grew shorter, his chest heavier. Every movement drained him, yet he couldn't stop. Behind him, the cries grew louder. Each voice seemed to pierce deeper into his chest like knives, made of memory. They were not alien voices anymore, they were human voices. Children's voices. His sister's voice. Finally, the pod released with a hiss, and another child fell into his arms. This one was weaker, its small chest barely rising with breath. Raynor pressed it gently against his armor, feeling its fragile life. Now, he carried two. His arms felt heavier, not from weight, but from the gravity of choice. The battle within inside. His mind, the war raged. "You will die here," the soldier's voice warned. 2 children, 10 children. It doesn't matter. You cannot save them all. And if you die, no one will remember you. No one will remember them, but the human voice refused to bend. If I leave them, they will die alone. If I save even one, I give hope. And hope is stronger than war. Raynor gritted his teeth, pushing himself toward the next pod. His body screamed in pain. His suit warned of oxygen failure. But his hands did not stop. A glimpse of trust. The first child tugged weakly at his arm, its glowing eyes looking up at him. It did not speak his language, yet its gaze spoke clearly. "You are not like the others. You are here to help." For the first time in what felt like years, Raynor felt trust. Real trust. Not from soldiers, not from commanders, not from governments, but from a child, alien and human at the same time. And that trust was heavier than any weapon he had ever carried. The clock ticks, his oxygen meter screamed now. 5 minutes left. His breath came fast, ragged, desperate, his vision blurred at the edges. He knew he was running out of time, but he also knew the truth. He could not turn back. Not anymore. He looked around at the remaining pods. There were too many. He could not save them all, but maybe, just maybe, he could save some. His hands shook as he reached for the next lock. The cries echoed louder, filling the ship, filling his heart. The decision Raynor whispered to himself, his voice trembling but firm. "I swore to protect life, even if it's not human, even if it costs me everything." The soldier inside him fell silent. The human had won. Commander Raynor stood in the wreck of war, 2 alien children clinging to him, the others crying for release, his oxygen running out. His heart was torn between duty and mercy, between hate and hope. And as he forced open another pod with the last of his strength, he knew this was no longer about war. It was about what it meant to be human. The cries of the alien children echoed through the broken corridors. Commander Raynor had opened 3 pods now, each child clinging weakly to him. Their small bodies trembled against his armor, their wide eyes full of fear. His oxygen meter blinked in angry red, warning him that his time was almost over. And then the ship woke up. At first it was only a faint mechanical hum. Then the sound grew louder, spreading through the walls. Red lights flashed brighter, emergency alarms shrieked, and hidden compartments along the corridor snapped open. From the darkness, metal shapes crawled out, enemy drones. They were small but fast, their eyes glowing with a cruel red light. Their spindly arms unfolded into sharp blades and plasma cutters. They were built for one purpose only: to hunt survivors. Raynor's pulse quickened. He had seen these machines before. They showed no mercy. They didn't care if the targets were adults or children. Their programming was simple: eliminate all life. The children whimpered, pressing tighter against him. Raynor's jaw clenched. He was weak, his oxygen low, his suit damaged. He could not fight for long. But if he didn't, These children would be cut down in seconds. The first attack. The first drone shot forward, its blades spinning. Raynor shoved off the wall, twisting his body through zero gravity. The blade scraped against his shoulder, slicing deeper into his armor. Sparks flew. Pain shot through his ribs, but he ignored it. With one free arm, he pulled his sidearm from his belt. The weapon was battered, its charge low, but it still worked. He fired once, twice. Bright flashes filled the corridor, and the drone exploded, into pieces. The children gasped, clutching him tighter, but there was no time to rest. 2 more drones shot toward him from the ceiling. Raynor spun, firing again. One drone shattered. The other dodged, its blade slashing past his leg. His suit tore open at the thigh, alarm screaming about pressure loss. He bit back a cry of pain, gritted his teeth, and rammed his boot into the drone, sending it crashing into the wall. His next shot finished it. The endless corridor. He pushed forward, pulling the children with him. The ship's corridor stretched ahead like a nightmare tunnel, glowing red with alarms. More drones crawled from the vents, their movements sharp, their eyes burning like tiny fires. Raynor's breaths came ragged, loud inside his helmet. Each step, each push, each shot drained him further. His vision blurred at the edges, but he forced himself to move. The children cried louder now, their voices echoing, adding pressure to his racing mind. He wanted to tell them to be quiet, to hide their fear, but he couldn't. They were children, their cries were natural, and maybe, in some strange way, they gave him strength. The desperate fight another drone leapt from behind. Raynor spun, but too late. The blade slashed across his back. His suit's alarm screamed louder, oxygen leaking faster. Pain ripped through him. He roared in anger, firing wildly until the drone burst apart. His chest heaved. His oxygen meter now blinked with a cruel message. 3 minutes remaining. He gritted his teeth. 3 minutes to fight. 3 minutes to escape. 3 minutes to decide whether he lived or died. The drones swarmed. He fought like a cornered beast, each shot precise, each movement desperate. His arms burned, his ribs screamed, his lungs felt like fire. But he did not stop. Not with the children pressed against him, not with their wide eyes watching. A narrow escape. At the end of the corridor, a broken door led to another section of the ship. Raynor kicked off the wall, pulling himself and the children through. The drones followed, but he fired into the door's control panel. Sparks flew, and the heavy blast door slammed shut behind him. The sound of metal claws scraping against the sealed door echoed through the hall. The drones were trapped on the other side. For now. Raynor floated in the new chamber, panting, his body trembling. The children clung to him silently, their glowing eyes fixed on his face. He looked down, at them, and for a moment he forgot his pain. But his oxygen meter blinked again. 2 minutes remaining. The chase continues. From the ceiling above, another compartment opened. More drones crawled out, their red eyes locking on him. Raynor's shoulders sagged. The hunt would not stop. The ship was alive, feeding on his weakness, pushing wave after wave of machines at him. The children whimpered again. Their cries were softer now, weaker, as if they knew his strength was almost gone. Raynor raised his weapon, his arm shaking. He whispered through clenched teeth, "I won't let them have you, not while I'm breathing." The hunter becomes the hunted. The drone surged forward. Raynor fired, every shot echoing like thunder in the dying ship. His body screamed with pain. His oxygen meter shrieked its final warning, and his vision dimmed. But his heart burned with fire. He was hunted, yes. But he was also hunting. Hunting for survival. Hunting for hope. And as the deadly chase tore through the broken corridors, Commander Raynor knew one truth. This was no longer a war between humans and aliens. This was a war between life and death, and he would fight until his last breath. The sound of metal claws grew faint as the blast door sealed shut. Commander Raynor floated in the new chamber, his chest heaving, his vision blurred. His weapon was almost drained, his suit torn and leaking, and his oxygen meter flashed its cruel warning. 1 minute left. The alien children clung to him, their glowing eyes wide with fear. They trembled. their small fingers gripping his armor as though letting go meant certain death. Raynor held them close, though his arms felt heavy as stone. He had fought with all his strength, but he knew the truth. His fight was almost over. He turned his gaze across the chamber. At the far end, half buried under broken pipes and twisted steel, was an escape pod. His heart skipped. Salvation. The last pod Raynor pushed forward, dragging the children with him. His boots scraped against the floor as he forced himself to move. Faster. The alarms screamed around him, the red lights pulsing like the heartbeat of a dying beast. When he reached the pod, his relief turned to dread. It was small, too small. He scanned it quickly. The seat was made for only 2, maybe 3 if crammed tightly, but he was holding more than that. And himself. Raynor's chest tightened. There was no space for him. The children looked up at him, their eyes shimmering with tears. They didn't understand the pod's limits, but he did. His mind raced. He could try to fit inside with them, but the system would overload and they would all die. He could take one child and leave the rest, but the others would suffocate here. Every option was a failure. The soldier's voice in his head whispered again, "Leave them. Save yourself. If you die here, it means nothing. Humanity needs survivors." But the human voice, his heart, spoke louder. "They are children. Their lives are worth more than yours. If even one escapes, hope escapes with them." Raynor stared at the pod, then at the children. His throat burned as if fire lived inside. The hardest decision of his life stood before him. The weight of memory. He remembered his colony again, the fire falling from the skies. He remembered his sister's small voice asking, "Will we live, Raynor?" He had promised her they would. He had promised her safety. But he had failed. Now, standing before these alien children, he saw her face in every one of them. Their cries were her cries. Their fear was her fear, and he realized this was his chance to keep the promise he had once broken. The sacrifice. Raynor's oxygen meter shrieked one last time. 30 seconds. His lungs burned, his vision tunneled. He had no more time to think. He pulled open the pod's hatch with shaking hands. The children cried out, their voices sharp with fear, but he hushed them softly. His voice cracked, but his words were steady. "You will live. You must live." He lifted the weakest child first, placing it gently inside. The pod systems hummed to life, wrapping the child in soft restraints. Then he guided the others one by one, pushing them carefully into the small chamber. Their eyes never left his. When the last child was inside, he hesitated. His chest ached. His lungs screamed for air. His body begged him to climb in, to fight for himself, but he didn't move. He knew what he had to do. He reached up, brushing his gloved hand across the pod's control panel. His vision blurred as he whispered, "Go, live. Carry the light where?" I could not. The hatch sealed shut. The children pressed their hands against the glass, crying silently. One of them raised its tiny hand toward him, mimicking the gesture he had once made. Trust, hope. Goodbye. Raynor's chest clenched, but he managed a faint smile. The launch. The pod's engines roared weakly, shaking the chamber. Bright light filled the room as it detached from the wreck and shot into the void. Raynor watched as it disappeared through the jagged hole in the ship's hull, streaking toward the stars. The chamber grew quiet again. Only the hum of machines and his own ragged breath remained. His oxygen meter went dark. He collapsed against the wall, his vision dimming. His weapon floated from his hand. His body trembled, then went still. But his heart was at peace. The aftermath outside. The escape pods soared through space. The children sat pressed together, watching through the small window. They saw the battlefield fade behind them, saw the burning ruins of ships, saw the endless dark. And somewhere in their small hearts, they carried the memory of the human who had chosen them over himself. For Commander Raynor, it was the end. For them, it was the beginning. The escape pod vanished into the black of space, carrying the alien children far from the wreck. Commander Rayner stood in silence, staring at the empty void where the pod had disappeared. His chest burned, his lungs screaming for air. His oxygen meter had already gone dark. Every breath felt like fire, sharp and painful. He leaned against the wall, his vision dimming. His body wanted to surrender. His mind whispered that it was over. But then, he heard it, the sound of claws, scraping, tearing, grinding against metal. The drones were back. The blast door behind him shook violently, sparks flying from the seams as machines cut through the steel. Red lights glowed from the cracks, as their blades sliced deeper. Soon the door would fall and the hunters would pour in. Rayner clenched his fists. He had nothing left, no air, no strength, no chance. But surrender was not in him. Not now. Not when the children depended on his sacrifice, the awakening of resolve. His body sagged, but his heart roared. A soldier's heart, a human heart. If I die fighting. Rayner forced himself upright, gripping his weapon with trembling hands. Its energy cell was almost empty, the barrel cracked, the charge light dim. But it would have to be enough. He stood tall in the center of the chamber, blood seeping from his wounds, his armor scorched and broken. He looked at the blast door as sparks showered down. "This is it," he muttered through ragged breaths. "My last stand." The drones break through with a deafening shriek. The blast door split open. Metal shards flew across the room as the drones swarmed in, their red eyes glowing like demonic stars. Their blades spun, their claws snapped, their metallic voices hissed. Rayner raised his weapon and fired. The first drone exploded into fragments, fire lighting the chamber. He pivoted, firing again. Another drone shattered, pieces scattering across the floor. But for each one that fell, two more came crawling through. Rayner roared, his voice echoing like thunder. He charged forward, meeting them head-on. His weapon spat fire until its cell ran dry, then clicked empty. But he did not stop. He swung the weapon like a club, smashing drones into walls, sparks flying with each strike, pain and fury blades slashed across his body. One tore into his shoulder, another across his thigh. His armor cracked further, blood floating in small droplets through the air. Pain racked him, but pain no longer mattered. He fought like a storm, like a beast unleashed. His strikes were wild, his movements desperate, but his fury carried him. He grabbed a drone by its arm and smashed it against the wall until it broke apart. Another lunged at him and he tore its blade free, driving it into the core of another machine. The chamber shook with violence, the sound of metal on metal, the hiss of sparks, the growl of a human who refused to fall. The edge of death. But his strength faded. His arms grew heavy, his breath shallow. The drones still came, crawling over the walls, circling him like wolves around a wounded prey. One leapt onto his back, its blade stabbing deep. He cried out, slamming himself against the wall to crush it. Another darted from the side, cutting into his leg. He stumbled, his body breaking piece by piece. His vision flickered, darkness creeping in. He could barely see now, barely think. But still, he stood. Still, he fought. The final flame at the center of the room, sparks from the broken systems flickered like dying stars. Rayner stumbled toward them, dragging 3 drones that clung to his body. His blood stained the floor, his armor cracked wide, open. He looked at the sparking wires, the glowing core of the ship's emergency reactor. He understood what he had to do. With the last of his strength, he grabbed a broken drone, its plasma blade still glowing. He jammed it deep into the reactor's core, the chamber filled with blinding light. The explosion, a roar, shook the wreck. Fire burst through the corridors, consuming drones by the dozens. The ship shuddered violently, its metal bones breaking apart. Drones screamed in mechanical tones as they melted in the inferno. At the center of it all stood Commander Rayner, his figure outlined in the blaze, his body burning, his voice silent. For a single heartbeat, he looked unbreakable. Then the fire swallowed him. Beyond the flames, far away in the small escape pod, The children felt the tremor as the ship exploded behind them. They pressed their faces to the glass, their eyes reflecting the burning light in the distance. One child lifted its small hand, pressing it gently against the window. The others followed, their voices soft with sorrow and gratitude. They did not understand the words of humans, but they understood his sacrifice. The legend born in the void of space. As the wreckage of the alien ship scattered, like ashes, a legend was born. The human who refused to surrender, the soldier who fought until his last breath, the guardian who saved the innocent even when they were not his own. Commander Rayner's body may have been lost in the flames, but his last stand was not. His story would live, carried in the hearts of the children he saved, and through them, his light would shine on. The wreck of the alien ship was gone. A burning cloud of fire and twisted metal scattered into the endless black, drifting silently across the stars. The explosion was so bright that even the distant sun seemed weaker beside it. Inside the small escape pod, the alien children huddled together, their glowing eyes fixed on the window. They had watched the ship vanish in flames. They had seen the humans' last stand. Their cries were quiet now, replaced by silence and heavy breaths. They did not have words for what they felt, but they understood loss. They understood sacrifice. And they knew that the human who had saved them was gone. Or, so they thought. The rescue signal, the pod systems beeped softly. A faint radar pulse swept across the stars, searching for any trace of friendly ships. For a moment, there was nothing but static. The children pressed closer, their small hands gripping one another. Then, an answer. A signal blinked on the pod's screen. A rescue beacon. Alien text filled the display. Elder's vessel approaching. The children gasped softly. Their people had not abandoned them after all. Somewhere out in the dark, a massive ship changed course, moving quickly toward the pod, but the pod's sensors detected something else too. Something strange, a weak human life sign, floating among the wreckage. The impossible survivor far behind them, hidden among the burning fragments of the destroyed ship, a single figure drifted. Commander Rayner. His armor was torn, his body scorched. But somehow, he was still alive. When the reactor had exploded, the blast had thrown him into the void. His body had floated away, spinning between shards of steel and clouds of fire. His helmet was cracked, his oxygen gone, but his eyes still moved faintly. He was barely conscious, his breath shallow. He should have died in the flames. He should have been nothing more than ash. Yet his heart refused to stop, because somewhere, in the stars, the children he had saved were alive. The alien homecoming. The children's pod docked with the approaching vessel. The alien elders rushed to greet them, their tall forms bending low as the children stumbled out. Gasps filled the chamber as they saw the survivors alive against all odds. Impossible, one elder whispered. We thought none escaped. The children spoke all at once, their voices overlapping, high-pitched and trembling. They tried to explain, pointing toward the stars, their hands drawing the shape of a human figure. Their words were broken, but their meaning was clear. A human had saved them. The elders froze in disbelief. A human, the enemy, had protected their young? The pod's computer chimed again, showing the faint human life sign still drifting among the wreckage. The search and argument broke out among the elders. Some said it was a trick, a trap. Others argued that the children's words were truth and that no trick could have saved them. Finally, one elder raised a hand. If what they say is true, then this human deserves more than death. Search the wreck, find him. Alien ships swept into the debris field, scanning the twisted remains. Drones carried beams of light, searching the black void. Minutes passed. The children waited, their eyes never leaving the window. And then, they saw him, a human figure floating among the ruins, still, motionless, almost gone. The recovery. The alien rescuers pulled Rayner's body inside their vessel. His armor was cracked, his face pale, his breath almost gone. Their medics worked quickly, sealing his wounds, forcing air back into his lungs. For a long moment, nothing happened. His chest did not rise. His eyes did not move. The medics shook their heads, but then his fingers twitched. His chest shuddered. A ragged breath escaped his lips. The children cried out with joy, rushing to his side. They pressed their small hands against his armor, their glowing eyes watching as the human clung stubbornly to life. The new beginning. When Rayner's eyes opened, he saw faces above him, not human, but alien. Faces filled not with hatred, but with awe. The children pressed close, their small hands gripping his arm. He coughed, his voice weak, broken but alive. "You made it." The children nodded, their eyes shining with tears. The elders stood behind them, silent. They had no words. A human soldier had given his life for their young, and in doing so, he had broken the chain of hate between their species. The legend days later, as the children were carried safely home, a story spread among their people. The story of the human who saved their young. He was no longer just an enemy. He was something greater, a guardian, a symbol. And though Commander Rayner lay in recovery, his body scarred and broken, his spirit was unbroken. He had survived when he should not have. He had saved lives when no one else could. His struggle had not been enough to break him. He had saved the alien children, and through them, he had saved himself.